Okay, bird is in his cage, had a little bit of attention, and I'll continue reading. Start this recording. Number 1, particle consciousness. Particle consciousness is linear. Linear is one word that comes after another word. People who rationally think their way through life are dominated by particle dynamics. They receive, store, and process information in a linear process. They think in logical terms, focus on content, and usually insist on reasonable explanation. They consider themselves to be dealing in terms of the real world of their senses. Life may be a dance, but it must be experienced as a step-by-step process. Because they are rational, they remember details from the past and seek positions, titles, and recognition. They are intent upon ensuring a more secure future. What they're trying to do, when you try to make sense of something, what you're trying to make sense of is, okay, tell me the story that's repeating in my brain and say what you mean exactly the way I repeat it in my brain. It's like when somebody gives you an explanation and you don't understand, like if you're in school and you don't understand what the teacher's telling you, what they do is repeat themselves over again. And it's like, no, I didn't hear you the way you explained it that way. Explained it in a completely different way so I understand you. But people don't get that. You use your own logic, your own senses to make sense of something when you need to come out of the box, find something completely new, and integrate it with what you think is common sense. What we think is common sense isn't common sense. It's a freaking lie. So that's why a lot of new things won't make sense to you. That's why a lot of people would call me crazy or a nutbar. Why? Because they don't have the awareness to think outside of the box and gain some new information. And because we have a global catastrophe about to happen, the only thing that makes sense to solve it is what makes sense to us right now. That's why Einstein came up with this concept that it's going to take a completely new mindset to figure out the solution. So you have to come outside of what makes sense to you. It's sort of like insanity is the new sanity. Like what you think is insane is not so much insanity. That's what I've come to discover. What genius and insanity is you're so much of a genius, but you don't have the communication skills to try and explain the genius of your idea with somebody that's using their common sense, if that makes any sense to you. Okay, wave consciousness. Wave consciousness, on the other hand, is nonlinear. Nonlinear is having all information come at you at the exact same time, not one after another. People who reference life from an emotional position are wave dominant. They feel their way through life. Information flows through them. Steps are part of a larger dance. Details are not as important as intention. Life is an ocean of experience, and information is received, stored, processed in terms of its context, not necessarily in content. Positions are not as important as staying in the dance. Holodynamic consciousness. Holodynamic consciousness is multidimensional. This means they can sense the different enfolded dimensions of conscious reality, including both particle and wave dynamics. But they include all dimensions, even hyperspatial dimensions. Thus they can hold different references at the same time. They are able to be present, can access their full potential self, and align harmonically before they act. They know how to embrace both particle and wave dynamics at one and at the same time, but they are more than the sum of the two. They are causal, proactive rather reactive. They live in the present and embrace the past and the future at the same time. They are more than just aware of the dance of life around them. They are the dance. That is a really hard concept to sort of wrap your brain around. Depending on which dimension of consciousness are chosen to view reality, with particle wave or holodynamic consciousness, one's experience with life changes dramatically. Each form of consciousness experiences reality in a different way. To begin our understanding, we can apply what has been discovered in various fields of science to the science of consciousness. Knowing the three forms of matter gives you insight into three forms of consciousness. We can explore different forms of thinking, the games that people play, and even the wars they fight. Knowing that the consciousness of one person or a group may be distinct from the others, but also knowing that in some dimension of reality their differences are superficial. We are all, in reality, holodynamic, but we are not necessarily aware of it. Knowing, for example, that there are different enfolded dimensions to reality allows us to search for hidden dimensions of consciousness in our own life. Understanding that everything is connected encourages further research in collective consciousness. Knowing there is a natural implicit order to life allows us to search for an implicit order of consciousness. Are there built-in levels of maturation that we all go through, maturity. How do these stages of development apply to our collective consciousness? There were some of the questions that led me into a PhD in developmental psychology. Take, for example, holodynamics. I discovered that understanding the holographic principle allowed me to access the hidden dimension of self-organizing information systems, or holodynes. Once I identified them, I came to understand their order of growth and their impact upon consciousness. Information theory encouraged the exploration of self-organization. Changing thoughts or feelings became a process of transformation. Quantum physics showed me how multi-dimensions can be operating at the same time. I soon came to understand how this dance of life we are all in is filled with alternative histories and parallel worlds. In my search, I discovered the door to our physical counterparts in hyperspace. I came face to face with the pre-computations, the source of our menu of options, and the exercise of free will. In Russia, during the intensive negotiations with the power structure of the Soviet Union, I came face to face with freedom and rode its wave until the collapse of the system. I watched it transform. I helped it transform. It can happen anywhere, anytime. It is happening with terrorism. The new science, when applied to the study of consciousness, uncovered the tremendous sophistication that is interwoven into the tapestry of life. From conception on, we are immersed in a complex dance we designed, and in the dance of life, we always have choice. We may be plunged into participating as particle players, or we may get lost in waves upon waves of complex energy systems at every stage of development. We can get thrown into field dynamics or any number of other situations, but throughout it all, we get to choose. I learned the hard way that we are never alone. Once we take ownership of who we are hyperspatially, we find out who we really are as we manifest our full potential self. This emergence of our fullest potential is a natural process of life. It is a process of discovery. We learn how dances are performed and choose our roles within the dance until we discover who we are in the grand scheme of things. Learning these steps of the dance, letting go, and going with the flow back and forth through the stages of our life cycle, we dance. At each stage, we experience emerging self-mastery, self-expression, and self-discovery. As we become more and more aware of our emotions, feelings, and intuitive insights, we begin to play with the rules as well as by the rules. As the essence of our nature begins to emerge, we discover our own presence that flames the emergence of holodynamic consciousness. At the same time, a new principle, wave consciousness, helps create the new multiple dimensions of personal preference and presence. We discover the dance in which all dances are played as one dance. As we become more and more aware of the whole dynamic, we move beyond rigid linear rules and the mindless flow of our own wave nature. We become consciously aware of our presence as a being without beginning or end. From beyond space and time, our potential, our full potential self emerges. We become present. It is just like sitting in that field of flowers. I could have just smelled the flowers or stayed within my own reverie and enjoyed the experience. On the other hand, I can become the field and reconnect with my natural state of being. I chose to become present. And in the ocean, I could have just swung along and watched the manta, enjoying every moment of the natural beauty, or I could become the manta and entered into a dimension of consciousness that is so comprehensive it ends all wars, because the dance of life is so overwhelming, magnificent compared to anything else. In Russia, I chose presence and reaped the harvest of transformation. In the Middle East, a similar thing is happening. It can happen anywhere because every problem is caused by its solution. It almost seems like to be present means that you can put yourself into your problem. If you are dealing with an enemy, can you put yourself in the shoes of your enemy? Can you be present and be at one and really feel and hear the logic that your enemy is using? And when your enemy can hear you, then you're kind of getting it. And it's like it is like that male-female thing going on, that women are from Mars, you know, Venus, and men are from Mars. Why is it men and women can't understand each other? Because women are nurturers by nature. We need to know the needs of a child who cannot speak, where men are generally hunters. So because we're nurturers, we can feel what our spouses need. We can read their minds, basically, even though we don't say that. We can anticipate the needs of our mate. Women's nature is definitely changing and taking more of a male dominance, so you may not see that in this generation. Where males, it's like, well, why don't you know what I want? You know, and a male is always, I can't read your mind, what do you expect? You know, and it's like, when you can put yourself in the shoes and see the needs of somebody else, then you're present. That seems to be what they're talking about. People who are aware of their own presence cannot be dominated by the dance, its rules and roles or prescriptions. They cannot be dominated by other dancers or by the systems that are set up to dominate others. Nor do holodynamics dissolve into the mindless euphoria of wave dynamics. They do not dance just for the sake of the dance. Holodynamics know who they are, and they dance by choice. People who dance by choice are free to dance. This is what we taught people in Russia. This is why like I can see this author, I see where he's coming from. I'm really, really pissed off at the guy because he has some really good shit, and he's trying to change doctors. He's trying to change the United Nations, even though his book says that it's got to start from the people, the micro. He's trying to change the macro, and he's just not present with the global condition. And although he knows this stuff, he's not aware. But we all play that game. I play that game myself, but it's hard to see yourself. That's why it's really important to have cooperation with each other, because I can't see what's in myself, and you need other people, a good friend that listens and can kind of see your full potential and be able to say it lovingly that, hey, this is where your problem may be. You're so easy to see it in other people, but it's hard to see it in yourself. But I can forgive this guy for, you know, because you just see that he's playing a different dance, and he's not really like I say, it's the unknown problem. It can solve every problem known to the human experience, except for you got to know that you have a problem to use it. I'm running out of time. Go to another tape. Peace out.